Okay, so picture this. You've got this teacher, right? He has a world-changing idea, and he's standing in front of this huge, eager crowd. But instead of launching into some big, complicated lecture, he just tells a story. A really simple story about a farmer. Now, what's so cool is that this ancient parable is basically a blueprint for understanding a question we still ask all the time. Why do some ideas totally take off while others just disappear?
But that kind of makes you wonder, right? I mean, if your message is that important, why tell a riddle? Why not just come out and say it? What's the deal? Well, that is the puzzle we're going to try and solve today, and we're going to use the story itself to find the key.
So let's just paint a picture here for a second. The story says there's this massive crowd, all gathered by a lake. They're so packed in, so tight against the shore, that the teacher, Jesus, actually has to get into a boat and push out a little bit from the land just so everyone can see and hear him. And it's from this kind of floating stage that he starts his lesson.
And what does he give them from this boat? Not a straight-up lecture, but a puzzle. It's a story about a farmer throwing seed around. Now, on the surface, it sounds super simple, but it's really a framework for understanding 4 totally different outcomes, 4 ways that any idea, any message, can land with people.
He kicks things off with just one word, listen. And he doesn't just mean let the sound hit your ears. He means pay attention. So the story goes, a farmer goes out to sow his seed, just casting it all over the place. And what's really key here is that the farmer isn't the variable. The seed isn't the variable. The only thing that changes is the ground where the seed lands.
So first up, some of the seed lands on the path. The hard, packed down dirt where everyone walks. It can't sink in, so it just sits right on the surface, totally exposed. And, well, before you know it, birds swoop down and eat it. Poof, gone. It never even had a chance.
All right, the next batch of seed lands in rocky places, where there's just a little bit of dirt on top of a bunch of rocks. And at first, this looks great. It springs up super fast. But the problem is, there's no room for roots to go down deep. So the moment the sun beats down, the whole thing just withers and dies. It's a flash in the pan, a burst of life, and then nothing.
Okay, scenario number 3. Some seed falls where there are a bunch of thorns. The good seed starts to grow, but guess what? So do the thorns, and they are relentless. They grow up all around the little plant, basically stealing all the sunlight, all the water. They just choke it out completely. It's starved of everything it needs, so it can't produce anything.
But finally, some of the seed lands on good soil, the kind of soil a farmer would actually want. And here, this is where everything is different. It doesn't just grow, it thrives. It absolutely explodes with life and produces this huge crop. We're talking a massive return for that one little seed.
And then he wraps up the whole story with this really cryptic line. He says, "Whoever has ears to hear, let them hear." It's basically like him saying, all right, I've given you the story, the puzzle's on the table, now who's going to figure it out?
And you know what? Turns out his closest followers were just as confused as anyone else. The story goes that later, when they got him alone, they were like, okay, what was that all about? And this moment, right here, is where we get the key to unlock the whole mystery. He basically tells them, look, the secret of all this, it's being given to you. But for everyone else on the outside, it's just a story. And that right there kind of creates this feeling that we're about to be let in on something big. We're about to go from being outsiders to insiders.
And boom! Here's the first and most important piece of the code. He says the seed. The seed is the word. It's not a literal seed, you see. It's a message, an idea, a piece of teaching. And once you have that one piece of information, the whole puzzle just starts to click into place.
Okay, so if the seed is the message, then it stands to reason that the different types of soil, well, they're not literal dirt either. They represent 4 different kinds of people, or maybe 4 different mindsets we can have when we hear a new idea. You've got the path, that's instant rejection. The rocky places, that's when you're excited at first but it doesn't last. The thorns, that's when you're too distracted. And the good soil, that's when you really take it in. So let's break each of these down.
All right, first up, let's talk about the path. This is what happens when an idea hits a mind that is just completely closed off.
So in this case, the person hears the words, sure, but the message doesn't sink in at all. The text explains that some kind of negative force just comes and snatches the idea away before they even have a second to think about it. It's the classic in one ear and out the other. Absolutely zero impact.
Okay, let's move on to the second type of soil. This is the rocky places scenario, what you could call the shallow start.
Now, this person is totally different at first. They hear the idea and they are pumped. They receive it with joy, thinking, "This is incredible, I love it." But the problem is, it's all on the surface. There's no depth, no real root system. So the second things get a little tough, maybe some trouble pops up, or people push back against the idea, they're gone. They fall away just as fast as they jumped on board. That initial buzz just wasn't enough.
Now for our third soil, which is a whole different kind of problem. In this case, the idea isn't rejected, and it's not just a shallow excitement either. No, this time it's actually accepted, but it gets squeezed out by everything else going on.
You can think of this as a mind that's just crowded. On one hand, you've got this new, good idea that's been planted, but on the other hand, you've got all the thorns. The story calls them the worries of life, the temptation of money, the desire for just more stuff. And both are growing at the same time, fighting for the same space, the same attention. And in the end, the thorns win. They just suck up all the resources, all your time, your energy, your focus. The original idea gets suffocated, and it can't produce anything. The person might even still say they believe the idea, but it has no real effect on their life because there's simply no room for it to breathe and grow.
And that finally brings us to the last one, the one we've all been waiting for. This is the good soil. This is where an idea doesn't just hang on for dear life, it absolutely thrives. The process here is actually really simple, but it's powerful. It's a three-step deal. First, the person genuinely hears the message. They're not just listening, they understand it. Step 2, they accept it. They don't just agree with it, they take it on board and make it part of them. And third, that deep acceptance naturally leads to action. They go on to produce a crop.
And we're not talking about a small return on investment here. The story describes this incredible, almost unbelievable harvest. Some produce 30, others 60, and some even 100 times more than what was originally planted. It just goes to show you, when a great idea finds a truly receptive and prepared mind, the potential for what it can create is just huge.
So when you boil it all down, this ancient parable is way more than just a nice story. It's kind of like a diagnostic tool for your own mind. It's telling us that the success of any idea, anything you learn, anything someone tries to teach you, has less to do with the person sharing it and way more to do with the kind of soil it lands in. And that leaves us with the one big question the whole story is built to make you ask yourself. A message is being sown right now. What kind of soil is it finding in you?